You're listening to Overhead Story Channel. Enjoy.
Anniversaries used to mean something. At least, I thought they did. A mark on the calendar to remind you that love was still alive and worth celebrating. But this one? This one felt different from the moment I got home from work. Ellison had made a reservation at a French place downtown, one of those dimly lit restaurants where the tables are too close together but the price tag makes you feel like it's exclusive. She wore a dark green dress I hadn't seen before. It clung to her in ways I used to admire but now just felt unfamiliar. Like I was looking at someone I'd once known but hadn't spoken to in years. She greeted me with a quick peck on the cheek. "You look nice," she said, even though I hadn't changed out of my office shirt. I mumbled a thanks and we headed out. On the drive, she hummed along to the radio, tapping her nails on the console like she didn't have a care in the world. I watched her out of the corner of my eye, trying to decode the rhythm of her mood. At the restaurant, we were led to a small corner table with a view of Congress Avenue. Traffic buzzed outside like a world we weren't part of. Ellison sat across from me, her back straight, her phone placed face down next to her plate. That was the first thing I noticed. Normally, she kept it in her purse, sometimes forgot it entirely. But not tonight. Our waiter brought over a wine list. She scanned it quickly and pointed at something without hesitation. "We'll have the Sancerre," she told him with a confident smile. Then, without missing a beat, she launched into a story about a client pitch she'd won the week before. I tried to listen. I really did. But every time her phone vibrated, even on silent, I saw it ripple through her shoulders. The way she tensed just slightly. The way she would glance down quickly, then look back up at me with a too bright smile. I said nothing at first. I kept my eyes on the menu, nodding along while her words turned into background noise. I ordered the duck. She ordered the halibut. We toasted. She made a joke about how 5 years married deserved a medal and I forced a laugh. But the third time her phone buzzed, mid-sentence, no less, I saw her glance down quickly, tilt the screen toward herself, and then shove it closer to the bread basket like it had burned her fingers. She didn't even finish her sentence. Just shifted gears entirely. "What was your favorite anniversary?" she asked suddenly. "I think mine was the Santa Fe trip. Remember that weird Airbnb with the goat farm?" I nodded slow. "Yeah," I said. "That one was good." But I was already elsewhere. I wasn't thinking about goat farms or New Mexico sunsets. I was thinking about the way her thumb had hovered over the screen, how she hadn't checked the message, just looked at who it was from and panicked. That's when I excused myself. I walked toward the restroom slowly, giving myself a moment to breathe. My head buzzed with the beginnings of something I wasn't ready to admit out loud. I splashed water on my face in the bathroom. Looked at myself in the mirror. I didn't look like a man celebrating a milestone. I looked like a man standing on the edge of a cliff, pretending there wasn't a drop below. On the way back, I slowed as I reached our table. From just behind her, I could see the glow of her phone screen. She hadn't locked it. A message preview had lit up the display, clear as day. "Chris, consultation, Rehart, miss your face already. Can't stop thinking about." She saw me before I could sit down. Her hand flew out like she was swatting a fly, flipping the phone over and laughing. "Geez, you snuck up on me." I sat down slowly. "Did I?" She was already pouring more wine. "You know, this reminds me of that vineyard tour we did in Temecula. God, you were such a lightweight. It was seamless, the pivot. Too seamless." She didn't ask if I saw the message. She didn't offer an explanation. Just steamrolled ahead with charm and nostalgia like a magician redirecting your gaze. I played along. I nodded. I even chuckled at the memory. But inside, something had cracked. It wasn't the message itself that did it. Not entirely. It was the look on her face. That flash of alarm, not guilt, not embarrassment, but fear. Like a kid caught cheating on a test, scrambling to erase the answers before the teacher sees. She didn't try to explain because she already knew. Knew it would sound hollow. Knew I'd heard enough to start connecting the dots. And I did. Quietly, while she talked about California wine and the overcooked lamb from that vineyard dinner, I sat there letting the silence between her words do the talking. The meal went on. Courses came and went. She snapped a photo of the dessert, some deconstructed cheesecake thing, and posted it to her Instagram story with the caption, "Celebrating love 2 hearts." I watched the screen light up again with likes and heart emojis. "Tell me something," I said, surprising even myself. She blinked. "What's that? What do you think makes a marriage last?" Her smile faltered for just a second. "Trust," she said after a pause. "And honesty. You know, communication." I nodded again. "Yeah, that's what I used to think, too." I didn't push it further. I didn't have to. She felt the weight behind my words. Her eyes flicked toward her phone again, then back to me. She raised her glass. To 5 years, she said. And making it through the hard stuff. We clinked glasses. Hers trembled just a bit. That night, as we drove home in silence, I stared out at the lights of the city. Something had shifted. I wasn't sure what came next, but I knew the version of our life I believed in, one built on trust, laughter, quiet Sunday mornings, that version had just taken its first real hit. You don't notice the fracture right away. Not when it's small. But once you feel it, it's there. Lingering. Spreading. And deep down, I think she knew it too. We didn't talk much on the ride home. Ellison rested her hand on the center console like she always used to, but it just sat there. I didn't take it. I kept both hands on the wheel, eyes forward, watching the city roll past in a blur of headlights and taillights. When she yawned and said, "That was a nice night," I only nodded. She didn't press it. The house was quiet when we walked in, dim with just the hallway light left on. She kissed my cheek and headed upstairs to shower, the faint sound of the bathroom door clicking shut behind her trailing in her wake. I stayed downstairs. Sat on the couch. Stared at nothing. The silence pressed in around me, and for the first time in a long time, I didn't try to fill it. I don't know what made me start remembering. Maybe it was the wine, or the silence, or the damn message I'd seen on her phone. But as I sat there in the soft hum of our living room, things began lining up in my mind, moments I hadn't thought much of at the time, but which now shimmered with new, uncomfortable clarity. There was the business trip to Phoenix last month. She said it was a conference, last minute, poorly organized. She'd left in a rush, grumbling about the hotel being under her company's name and having to share an Uber with a coworker. She came back glowing. That was the strange part. I remember asking how it went, and she said, exhausting, but she couldn't stop smiling. That night, I borrowed her car and noticed the GPS history still had a saved destination. It wasn't the hotel. It was a residential address out in Mesa, not even near the conference center. I'd asked her about it the next day, and she brushed it off. "Oh, I must have gotten dropped off there by mistake. The Uber app sometimes gets weird." I accepted it then, mostly because I wanted to. But now? Now I saw it differently. And then there were the outfits. Subtle at first, new blouses, heels she never wore for work, perfume she hadn't touched in years suddenly resurfacing. She said she'd gotten a promotion, the new role required more client-facing time. But the numbers didn't add up. One night, she left the house in what I could only describe as cocktail attire, claiming she was meeting a colleague at a mixer hosted by their marketing partners. She didn't get home until after midnight. I was half asleep on the couch when she walked in barefoot, shoes dangling from her hand, makeup smudged. "My feet are K***ing me," she whispered with a grin. "You're still up." I asked her how it went, and she just shrugged. "Long, boring." Then she yawned dramatically and disappeared upstairs. But the way she looked in that doorway, messy, carefree, almost elated, it didn't match boring. There were phone calls too. Ones I walked in on unexpectedly. Her voice would shift instantly, playful one second, suddenly monotone the next. I remember catching her on the porch one night, laughing at something she'd just heard. She told me she'd been talking to her mom, but when I asked about the conversation later, she couldn't remember what it was about. "It was just small talk," she said, waving it off. "You know how moms are." And I did. Which is why I believed her. Piece by piece, these little inconsistencies, so easy to dismiss on their own, began to weave together into a larger tapestry. And the pattern wasn't pretty. I leaned back on the couch and looked up at the ceiling. Our ceiling. The one we picked together when we chose this house 4 years ago. We spent weeks arguing over everything back then, paint swatches, crown molding, even where the couch should go. But it had felt like teamwork. Like we were building something that mattered. Now I couldn't tell what we'd built or if any of it had been real. I rubbed my face with both hands and stood up slowly. The stairs creaked beneath my feet as I made my way to the guest room. I hadn't slept there in years. Not since the time I had the flu and didn't want to infect her. Back then she'd left tea outside the door and texted me dumb jokes until I fell asleep. There was no tea tonight. No dumb jokes. Just silence. I sat on the edge of the bed, running my fingers along the worn blanket. My chest felt tight, not with sadness, but something colder. Something settling in the space where trust used to live. I didn't want to believe she was cheating. That word felt too sharp, too heavy. It belonged in someone else's life, someone else's story. Not mine. Not ours. But I couldn't deny what I was feeling. The weight of too many almosts. Too many coincidences. Too many moments that used to seem random, now forming a quiet but undeniable shape. I laid back, stared at the ceiling, and waited for sleep. It didn't come. Eventually, I heard the bathroom door upstairs creak open. Her footsteps moved across the bedroom above me, the muffled thump of a drawer sliding shut. Then stillness. She hadn't come to look for me. Did she even notice I wasn't in bed? That thought hurt more than it should have. I don't know how long I lay there, but at some point I started scrolling through our old photos on my phone. Anniversary dinners, road trips, lazy Sundays on the couch with takeout. Her head on my shoulder, eyes closed. Me pretending not to notice she was asleep. It used to mean something, those quiet hours. It used to be enough. Now every photo looked like a ghost. Smiling faces captured seconds before the cracks began to show. And maybe that's the cruelest part. Betrayal doesn't announce itself. It sneaks in dressed like routine. It hides behind smiles and soft kisses and just one more drink before she gets home late. At some point, I must have dozed off. When I opened my eyes, the first light of morning was just beginning to seep through the curtains. My head hurt. My mouth was dry. The realization from last night lingered heavier now that it had survived the night. I stood up, stretched, and made my way to the kitchen. The coffee pot was empty. A post-it note sat on the counter in Ellison's handwriting. Early call with LA team. Back by lunch. XOE. 3 short sentences. No mention of last night. No question about where I'd slept. Just a dash of affection tossed at the end like it still meant something. I stared at the note for a long time. Then I crumpled it in my hand and dropped it in the trash. The illusion was breaking. And once it starts, you can't unsee the fault lines. Denial is a warm blanket, but it smothers you if you hold onto it too long. I spent days wrapped in it, trying to tell myself I'd overreacted. That maybe I had misread the message or the GPS pin or the hotel scent on her coat. But every time I looked at Ellison, every time I caught her smiling at something on her phone and tucking it out of sight, the blanket felt tighter around my chest. I couldn't breathe in our own home. So I stopped pretending. I didn't say a word to her about what I was feeling. Instead, I smiled when expected, nodded when prompted, and quietly began digging. The breakthrough came from something so mundane it almost felt cruel. We shared a hotel loyalty account, something we set up when we used to take weekend getaways, booking rooms to escape the Austin grind. It was tied to both our emails, though she never used hers to log in. One afternoon, while she was on a strategy call in her office upstairs, I opened the website. There it was. A recent stay booked just 2 weeks prior at a resort outside San Antonio. Her alibi had been a conference in Houston. I clicked the reservation. Room for 2. Reserved under her name, but the confirmation email listed a second guest, a Christopher Daniels. The same name from the message notification I saw at dinner. Only now he wasn't hiding behind parentheses or emojis. He was right there, bold and plain. I stared at it for a long time. It felt like falling off a ledge and never hitting the ground. There was more. A detailed invoice was attached to the booking, room service receipts, spa treatments, bar charges. Everything itemized. 2 glasses of Cabernet every night. A couple's massage scheduled for the afternoon. She told me she was stuck in a panel on digital media disruption. A romantic in-room dining package with steak and lobster, candlelit. I remembered texting her that night, asking how the hotel food was. She'd replied with a photo of a boring Caesar salad and said, "Ugh, nothing special." She had deleted the messages from her phone. I hadn't. I copied every document. Asterisked every receipt. I didn't know what I'd do with them yet, but I needed proof. Not for court, not for revenge. For me. So that later, when my mind started twisting facts to soothe the sting, I'd have cold data to pull me back. Still, part of me needed more. We had a shared cloud photo account, one we used to sync our devices so that road trip pictures and birthday dinners were always in the same folder. She must have forgotten it was still connected to her phone. There were dozens of new photos I hadn't seen. Not explicit, but an asterisk mate. Worse, somehow, her standing on a balcony at sunset in a white robe, wine glass in hand. A man's reflection was visible in the sliding glass door behind her, shirtless, holding up his phone for the *T. I zoomed in. He wasn't handsome. Just confident. Relaxed. Like he knew he belonged there. Another photo, Ellison laughing at something, curled up on a lounge chair beside a fire pit. Her legs rested across his. You could only see his torso and arm, but it was enough. They looked happy. Carefree. Like they were in the middle of something that had become familiar. And the most damning of all, a video. 10 seconds long. She's walking barefoot on a trail at dusk, the camera following behind. She turns around, smiling, and says, "Stop filming me, you creep." Then laughs. The voice that responds is deep, playful, unfamiliar. Not mine. I paused it halfway and closed the laptop. My throat was tight. I wasn't crying. Not yet. But my hands wouldn't stop shaking. This was it. This wasn't suspicion anymore. It wasn't dots on a board or feelings I couldn't prove. It was a man's name on a hotel receipt. 2 forks on a dinner tray. A robe she didn't buy for our house. His voice echoing in a video from a sunset we were never supposed to share. It was betrayal with a paper trail. When she came downstairs later, fresh-faced from a nap, she smiled and asked what I wanted to do for dinner. I said I wasn't hungry. She laughed. You? Not hungry? Are you okay? Just tired, I said, keeping my voice even. She kissed my forehead. You've been working too hard. I didn't respond. I just watched her as she walked into the kitchen, humming. Like everything was fine. Like she hadn't rewritten the rules of our marriage while I was still playing by the old ones. That night, after she fell asleep, I sat on the edge of our bed in the dark. She mumbled something in her sleep. Rolled over. Her arm brushed mine. I didn't flinch. I just stared at the ceiling. The worst part of betrayal isn't the act itself. It's realizing the version of them you believed in never really existed. The woman next to me wasn't my wife. Not anymore. I didn't leave that night. I didn't slam the door or shout or shake her awake demanding answers. That would have been too easy. Too emotional. What I felt was colder than rage. More methodical. I needed distance, not just from her, but from the version of myself who still believed in her. So I waited. For 5 more days, I played the part. I woke up beside her, made coffee, sent emails, nodded during her casual complaints about coworkers. We laughed at a dumb show one evening and she kissed my temple like nothing had shifted between us. But inside I was gone. I stopped sharing. I stopped reaching. I stopped caring what she had to say about anything beyond the surface. Everything she said sounded rehearsed now, like an actress stuck in a role she didn't remember auditioning for. And maybe I was the same, a hollow co-star in a story that used to feel real. The plan came together in pieces. I moved funds out of our joint accounts and into a private trust under my name only. Nothing shady, just clean, legal, and untouchable. I opened a P.O. box under a new address. Canceled the lease on our storage unit and transferred the contents to a facility she didn't know about. Things she never touched anyway, my dad's tools, old books, photos she never asked about. I contacted a lawyer. A woman recommended by a friend who'd gone through something similar. She didn't blink when I handed over the folder, receipts, **, TS photos. Just nodded, scanned through them, and said, we can move quickly. And I wanted quick. I wanted clean. I wanted silence. That's why I didn't confront Ellison. Not even once. I didn't want the drama, the fake tears, the denial she'd spin with the same ease she used to untangle her necklaces. I didn't want her narrative. I already knew mine. On the morning I left, the sky was overcast. She was on a video call in the upstairs office, her voice carrying through the floorboards, laughing at some inside joke, the same laugh I'd once thought only I could earn. I packed quietly. Just one duffel bag and a small suitcase. Enough to get by. I didn't want to take much. The house didn't feel like mine anymore. Every room had absorbed her betrayal like smoke clinging to the curtains. I wasn't trying to reclaim anything. I just wanted out. I left my keys on the kitchen counter next to a mug I knew she'd grab later, wifey printed in cursive across the ceramic. A gift from me. Bought back when I still thought the title meant something. I turned off my phone, pulled the SIM card and tossed it in the sink. Then I walked out. No note. No goodbye. Just gone. The rental truck I'd pre-booked was parked 2 blocks away. I didn't want to risk her seeing it from the window. I loaded the bags in the back seat and started driving, no destination yet, just direction. I told myself I'd figure it out once I hit the outskirts of the city. There was no part of me that wanted to look back. Not at the neighborhood, not at the house, not even at the life I'd built that she'd quietly torched. My lawyer would handle the delivery of the divorce papers. The documentation was all there, timestamps, financials, photos. Enough to stop her from spinning a narrative. I didn't need vengeance, I needed clarity. She'd get everything she was due under the law, but nothing more. That night, I checked into a small inn outside Waco, one of those quiet roadside places with vending machines that still took quarters and lamps that hummed when you turned them on. It was clean. That was enough. I stared at the ceiling for hours, not out of grief, but out of sheer disbelief at how fast a life can unravel once you tug on the right thread. I remembered a time, maybe 2 years ago, when Ellison had planned a surprise weekend in Colorado. Just us, no laptops, no phones. She said she wanted to unplug. Reconnect. I remember her sitting on the cabin porch with her feet in my lap, looking at the trees and saying, this is how I know we're solid. We don't need noise. I think about that version of her sometimes. I wonder if she meant it. Or if she was already checking out, building a bridge to somewhere else, someone else, while I was still standing still. I slept better than I thought I would that night. When I woke up, the sun was slanting through the blinds, and for the first time in weeks, there was no tightness in my chest. Just space. Air. Stillness. I turned on my new phone, registered under a different name using a new number, and checked my email. One unread message from my lawyer. Papers delivered. No response yet. That was fine. I didn't need one. I went out for coffee and sat by the window watching cars drift past. The world hadn't ended. The sun still rose. People still rushed to work and picked up breakfast tacos and sent morning texts they believed in. The world doesn't stop when your heart breaks. And maybe that's the point. By the time I checked out of the inn and got back on the road, I had a destination in mind. A small coastal town where an old college friend had a cabin. He'd offered it once during a reunion, said, "If you ever need to disappear, it's yours." At the time, I laughed. Now, I texted him. He replied almost immediately. "Keys are under the mat. Go." I drove the rest of the day with the windows down. Let the wind hit my face. The playlist I queued was old stuff, songs Ellison never liked. Some from college. Some from my dad's truck. Each one felt like a breadcrumb back to myself. As the sun set behind me, painting the sky in soft orange and dusty pink, I finally felt it. Relief. Not because I'd escaped the marriage, but because I'd escaped the lie. It didn't take long for the ripple effect to reach her professional world. Ellison had always been polished, impeccable even. The kind of person who color-coded her calendar and managed 3 client accounts without breaking a sweat. Her position at the firm wasn't just a job, it was part of her identity. She used words like leverage and brand narrative in casual conversation. She made power moves in heels. The company loved her, trusted her, which made what came next all the more satisfying, quietly, distantly, coldly satisfying. My lawyer had asked me early on if I wanted to pursue personal damages. I said no. This wasn't about revenge. But the evidence, the hotel receipts, the emails, the photos, even timestamps of video calls she missed while supposedly on-site with a client was compelling enough that my attorney suggested a different route. Her company had a strict code of conduct, and Ellison had blurred every line of it. They prided themselves on transparency, ethics, zero tolerance for misuse of company resources or relationships, as one of their glossy brochures stated. I didn't need to shout from rooftops or name names. I just forwarded a single zip folder, carefully prepared, methodically organized, to their HR department, addressed to the Internal Ethics Board. No rage, no accusations, just facts. I didn't expect to hear back, but within 48 hours, things started moving. Fast. First, her affair partner, Christopher Daniels, the consultant with the heart emoji, disappeared from the company website. No farewell post, no LinkedIn update. Just gone. Word got around through mutual acquaintances. He had resigned quietly under pressure, following an internal investigation into conduct violations. The very next day, Ellison's name vanished from the executive calendar. She didn't tell anyone, but I still had contacts. A former colleague of hers, someone who'd always liked me better than her, if I'm honest, sent me a message. Not sure what's going on, but HR was in meetings all day. She looked rattled. I could picture it. Ellison, still in her signature blazers and blowout hair, trying to maintain composure while the walls started closing in. I imagined her staring at her computer, trying to log into shared drives only to find her access revoked. Watching projects she'd led suddenly reassigned. Watching the empire she'd built around her work ethic crack at the seams. She tried to recover, I'm sure. I could almost hear her voice in those meetings. Controlled, rehearsed, polite. "This is a misunderstanding. That wasn't a professional trip, that was personal. None of it affected my work. But it didn't matter. The receipts told their own story. Company credit card charges logged during non-client weekends. Spa treatments written off as client wellness incentives. Hotel stays scheduled during blackout periods where employee travel was frozen. There was no wiggle room, no plausible deniability. And as much as Ellison was smart, she wasn't quick enough this time. I'd moved faster. By the end of that week, her email was suspended. Her calendar was cleared. Her company phone went dark. She wasn't fired outright. Not yet. But she was told to work remotely while the review is conducted, which in their world was a professional purgatory. A holding pattern before they decide if you deserve exile. She didn't reach out to me. Not once. Maybe she knew there was nothing left to say. Or maybe she was still trying to control the optics, hoping if she spun fast enough, the fallout wouldn't stick. But damage control doesn't work when you're the one who lit the match. By the time she finally did surface online again, her LinkedIn headline had changed from Strategic Director at Company to a vague marketing specialist brand enthusiast connector, the digital equivalent of someone trying to smile through a punch to the gut. Meanwhile, the lease on our apartment was set to expire in 2 weeks. I had already signed the paperwork to vacate my name from it. I wasn't going back, not even to collect what I'd left behind. My attorney arranged for the last of my things to be picked up, boxed, and shipped to a P.O. box under my name. The apartment itself had always been more her aesthetic than mine. Minimalist furniture, glass coffee tables, books arranged by color. Felt like a showroom, not a home. Now it was unraveling too. Management sent her a final notice about renewal. There was no cosigner now, no dual income. She missed the deadline. Whether she ignored it or just forgot, who knows? Either way, the lease was canceled. She'd have to find a new place on her own. I heard, again through a mutual friend, that she was staying with a friend in the meantime. Something about taking time to reset. The version of her being passed around now was quiet, withdrawn. Not herself. There was speculation about burnout, stress, maybe even health issues. She hadn't told anyone about the divorce yet. She probably wanted to control the story first. But the truth has a way of bleeding through. One afternoon, I got an email from someone I hadn't spoken to in years. A former classmate of ours from grad school. He worked in the same industry. His message was short. Sorry to hear about Ellison. If it's any consolation, everyone's seeing through her now. That's the thing about reputations built on perfection. They shatter beautifully. And as for me, I stayed out of sight. Off the grid, mostly. My friend's cabin on the coast became my refuge. Morning walks along the sand. Quiet dinners with music and no small talk. Nights where I finally slept through the night without waking to check if her side of the bed was still warm. She didn't know where I was. That was intentional. Some days I wondered what she was thinking. If she was angry or heartbroken or just embarrassed. But those thoughts came less and less. I didn't care about her emotions anymore. Not really. Not after everything. Her collapse wasn't mine to manage. Not anymore. I had my own life to rebuild. And this time it would be real. A week passed in silence. No texts. No emails. No missed calls from Ellison. I almost thought she was finally letting go, until the reservation alert showed up. A ping from a dining app we used to share. Reminder, Maison Pine, table for 2. Friday at 7 p.m. Maison Pine was our place. The restaurant where we celebrated landing our first apartment. Where she once cried over creme brulee when I gave her a bracelet with our initials engraved. Place wrapped in history. And that date? It was circled on her calendar as the night we first met. I almost ignored it, but curiosity got the better of me. Friday evening, I walked into Maison Pine, not alone. The woman beside me, someone new, had a laugh that didn't feel rehearsed. Someone who didn't know the version of me that bent over backward trying to keep a marriage alive. She just knew me now, stripped of illusions. We were seated at a corner table just visible through the restaurant's front window. At precisely 7:03, Ellison arrived. She wore the green dress she'd worn on our 5th anniversary. Her hair done just the way I used to love. She glanced around, hopeful, and then her eyes landed on the table set for 2. There was no one sitting there. Just a sealed envelope placed on the white linen cloth. She stepped closer, slowly. A waiter nodded toward the envelope. This was left for you. I watched her from across the room. She opened it. Inside was a single note, handwritten in my familiar scrawl. This seed is for the person I once trusted. That person no longer exists. Through the glass, I watched her read it once, twice. Her hands trembled. Her face crumpled. And for the first time, I saw her cry in public. No hiding behind laughter. No pretending. Just raw, open regret. She looked up, scanning the restaurant until her gaze landed on me. I didn't hide. I didn't smile, wave, or nod. I just turned back to my table, to the woman who made me laugh, and kept talking. That was the last time I saw Ellison's face in person. The next morning, she went back to the house. Our house. Except it wasn't ours anymore. Movers were there already, hauling out furniture she had insisted on keeping. The sleek dining table, the sectional, the mirror she said made the room feel more open. All boxed up, labeled donation. The walls were bare. Even the scent of the place had changed. She called my name twice. Once at the door, once down the hallway. No answer. On the front gate was a photo of us. One from our early anniversaries when we still dressed up just to cook pasta at home. It was pinned with a note. 6 words, sharp as a scalpel. You erased us. Now I return the favor. Neighbors passed her without a glance. She rang the bell again. Knocked. Waited. No one came. The code to the door had been changed. Her keys no longer worked. Even the mail slot was sealed shut. And then finally it hit her. She hadn't been left behind. She'd been erased.